I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Today we're reading from the book of 1 Kings, chapter 9. So let's focus on verses 4 through 6. Now, if you walk before me, as your father David walked, in integrity of heart and in uprightness, to do according to all that I have commanded you, and if you keep my statutes and judgments, then I will establish the throne of your kingdom over Israel forever, as I promised David your father, saying, you shall not fail to have a man on the throne of Israel. But, and I put that in there on purpose, but years ago I was having lunch with a pastor friend, and he nonchalantly mentioned the time when he got shot. That doesn't happen often. This came as a shock to me, because at that time in my life, I don't recall having ever met someone who had been shot, much less anyone who lived to tell about it. And I thought, well, man, maybe this guy had a big gang. Maybe he was in a gang, or maybe he was some kind of mobster or something. Maybe he was in the war. Actually, the story was as comical as it was tragic. You see, when my friend was in grade school, he and a buddy found a .22 rifle cartridge in his father's desk drawer. And they decided that they would go to the garage and hit the cartridge with a hammer. And then eventually, blam, gunshot goes off. But there was no gun. After all the instructions that you give to kids about staying away from guns, those boys had no idea that the potential of getting shot lies less in the rifle and solely in the bullet. Rifles don't shoot people. Bullets shoot people. Nobody could say that Solomon wasn't warned, because the Lord had told him precisely what the price tag for infidelity would be. And God is so kind, isn't He? He spells it all out. He warns us clearly so that we'll understand the urgent need for faithfulness. And God hasn't changed, by the way. The New Testament book of Hebrews scares the stew out of us. And add it all up to God's grace and mercy, which result in the safety of His people. In today's chapter, the Lord, through Solomon's dedication prayer, authorizes the temple as a conduit of grace, literally a pipeline of grace, where Israel will have access to His presence. And then He assures Solomon that the king will enjoy Davidic-style blessing so long as he lives a Davidic-like life. But the sobering part of God's message is very clear. There is a high cost for apostasy. Unfaithfulness will bring loss. Israel will lose its territory. It'll lose its throne, and eventually the temple. You see, only a fool would flirt with faithlessness. But of course, that's fools like us. So let today's chapter encourage you to stay humble before we stumble, to get a checkup from the neck up before we get tore up from the floor up. You ever heard that one? Well, you hadn't been in my neighborhood. Never stop seeking God's word with fearful respect, knowing that all we are and all that we have is because of God's faithfulness, and that should empower our faithfulness. I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Groundworks Ministries operates entirely through financial donations from faithful people like you. And if you're being ministered to through the daily teaching of Groundworks Ministries, and you'd like to help us to bring revival by leading God's people back to the Bible, well, then would you consider donating to Groundworks Ministries today? You know, the right time to do the right thing is always right now. And we need your support now more than ever. Donating is secure, and it's also easy at our website. So check us out at groundworksministries.com.